Hello, and welcome to another episode of Painting with Rob. Today, we're going to go ahead and begin with a bit of a story. This is the story of Cadmus and the Sewn Men. One of my favorites, Greek tales from back in the day. It was about a man who went to found a city. All of his men were killed by a giant serpent, which he slew with a stone. So he killed the snake, lamented, sacrificed a cow, and the god was like, "Don't worry, just take the teeth and sow them in the earth, and then bang, you've got yourself a bunch of warriors." And those are what was known as the Sewn Men. Now, how this relates to what we're doing today is Warcry, one of the box games from Games Workshop, has one of the armies, and I forgot the name, I should have looked this up, but it's been a while since I've looked at their cards. But essentially they are those serpent hoplites. So let's go ahead and hop over to our other screen, and I can show you what I mean. So you can kind of see in the background, we have our reference material for today. These are the gentlemen, rising up from the earth, having been freshly sewn into it by the teeth of the giant serpent. Now, for the miniatures, I did a test model here. Well, he's more than a test model. It's me trying to finish these guys. So I wanted to keep with that delightfully green theme. I liked this sort of worn metal look, so I'm trying to really get that sort of look. And today, that's really what we're going to be focusing on. I played around a little bit, so this is kind of the starting point. I used our good old-fashioned zenithal priming with a little bit of dry brushing to get the spots that I missed. And then we're going to be diving into making this guy look like this guy. And if we're very lucky and I move with proper speed, we'll actually be able to hop into a couple more. We've got some guys that just have these daggers. Got 3 of those. We've got this big burly chap, which is going to be a lot of fun to give a paint. And then a nice little snake priest, which is a lot of fun. So normally these are great for Warcry. I mean, they obviously are Warcry models, but I'm going to be using them for a... Oh, goodness, there's my focus. Sorry about that. I'm going to be using these for D&D. For a Theros, or the Mythic Odyssey of Theros one-shot. So, figure this would be fun to let you guys kind of see the process I go through to get these things painted. I discovered, to my chagrin, that this copper color takes like 3 coats to cover. So, yeah, let's go ahead and just dive right in. For our copper today, we're going to be using Hashnut copper. And to get started, we're going to go ahead and use our regiment brush. Also, my focus is very, very close. So, as always, remember to properly shake your paints. We're also going to be continuing to use our wet palette because, let's be honest, it makes painting a lot easier, a lot more efficient. Again, I like to grab out some paint with the back of a brush and then just sort of roll it off onto the wet palette. Don't forget to clean your brush, even if it is the back side of it. You want to be grabbing that later and wonder, why is my hand covered in paint? Well, the answer is because you covered your brush in paint. Oh. Make sure my wires and things aren't crossed. There we go. All right. That's a good distance. Now for the shield, I'm excited for the shield because there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with it, and we'll be diving into that in a little bit. We're gonna start though just with our. We're gonna start with the armor here. Oh, this guy actually has a lot less armor. So they've got this big old belt here. These armored loincloths. I'm going to make sure I can focus on this. That way you can actually see what I'm doing. Yeah, let's go ahead and dive right into it. So we've got our paint on our palette. Let's go ahead and wet the old brush. Get some paint on there. Making sure not to put it too deep onto the bristles. We don't want to get it into the metal part. And then we'll just start. Find a good spot for you. Start applying. So, one of the things I discovered when I was first painting this is this copper is it's very opaque. You can really see the color underneath it through here. And I did some experimenting with putting the sort of turquoise color on first, and then sort of trying to dry brush the metal over top of that. But I didn't like how it looked, so I ended up going with this technique, which is much more of the sort of oh goodness, sorry, my brain turned off for a sec. More of the sort of like worn metal look, which I kind of like, because in the art that I'm kind of using as my reference, this guy here, they're coming up out of the dirt already with a sort of, you know, they're fully grown warriors. They're sort of they've already taken some, or their armor's already sort of, you know, it's wet. They were in the dirt, you know. So my question for you guys: if you were going to be sewing the giant snake's teeth into the dirt to grow soldiers, would you water your teeth? The teeth that you sewed, not your teeth, the teeth that you sewed into the earth. Because, you know, it'd be a little awkward if they all popped up and their armor was all rusty and like, why are we so wet? Oh, that's my bad. I was watering your teeth because I thought I needed to. So these are the questions that will on occasion come to mind as you're doing your painting. And I want to make sure I don't, because there's a lot of really good detail in these models, a lot of very sharp, very fine detail, and so I want to make sure I don't fill that up, don't gum it up with paint. I know that there are a lot of people who aren't as keen on Games Workshop's sort of practices when it comes to pricing or that sort of thing, and I completely understand. I am with you on that one. One of the things that can't be denied, though, is the detail on their models are bonkers. Like the sharpness of the detail, the poses are so delightfully dynamic. It's that question of do you go with the with other models because you don't like the practices of the company, or do you you know, go with the models because you like how they look, kind of thing. That's a decision you have to make ultimately. You know. But a lot of times I just like putting paint on miniatures, you know. Good looking miniatures. Where is my focal distance? Sorry, guys. Is it there? Oh, now I've gotten too close. Oh, all right. Is that right? Sure. All right. So with the shield, what I ended up doing for this guy was I started with a layer of the bolt gun metal, and then along the edges, I did the more of our bronze, copper. Well, I suppose bronze is more sort of appropriate for the time period. That's the thing; they have such a similar look. This is my bronze. Oh, this is Look at those. Look at that color difference. Oh, I guess it is a little bit lighter for my copper. That's okay. Just diving right into it. Alrighty, we're gonna head over to our, lead belcher, not bolt gun. Head over to the lead belcher. Gonna do some shaking, so I'll pause you for just a second. Alright, vigorously shook. I'll go ahead and then grab out some of my metal. Roll it onto the wet palette. Clean off the old brush. And we're keeping at it. So one of the things, again, we're coming back to this wet palette, and the reason I really thoroughly enjoy it. So, were these colors on my dry palette, I would be concerned switching from between these two, having it start to check my, there we go. Having it start to sort of dry out, but because I got it on the old wet palette, I can feel confident kind of switching between the two. Now I haven't decided for their weapons. I like the idea of doing the bronze weapons, but at the same time also, like if they have access to steel, it would make sense that they would make their weapons out of steel. You know, for big plates and large chunks, doing it out of different materials would make sense, because you know, you don't have a great abundance of a material. You're not going to spend it on like full-on shields and things. He says, covering the shield in a this thing. No, in the end, this mostly won't be. It'll be mostly the copper color. It's just I like having the base of the metal. I feel like it helps with the process. I don't know. Lost my marbles. Sorry. If it seems a little bit like I'm out of sorts, it's because I'm looking at the sheer sort of volume of miniatures that I need to have done by Sunday and think to myself, how in the world am I going to get all these guys ready? And to be honest, what will probably end up having to happen is that I'll have to sort of do a sort of good enough kind of thing, which I don't like to do, but if the option is to have one very done model and a bunch of not done models, and oh, I missed that arm completely. Oh dear, that's okay. So I tried to do with the skin, I tried to do what is it called? The contrast skin color, but ultimately I didn't really like how it turned out, mostly because underneath is still very, very dark. It's that matte black that I primed with. So what I'm going to end up doing is going back over. This is the pre-wash sort of base layer. So I tried to get it a little bit more fleshy, and then we'll get some darker washes on there to darken it up. Make sure that they're not all, you know, painfully Caucasian. Now, for those of you who are painting BattleTech, because I know that there are some of you that are, a lot of the metal techniques I'm using on these guys will definitely translate to BattleTech minis. The cloth, not as much. Unless, of course, you've gone so far as to put a banner on your mechs, in which case I tip my hat to you. Yeah, I think we're going to just commit to this weapon being metallic. I'm going to do this now, since we're here, and I've got it. Get those spikes done. So before I got distracted, what I was trying to say was, you can there's a certain you can very quickly get some paint on a model, and it'll look on the table much better than an unpainted miniature. Now, sure, it's not as nice as it could be if it was fully painted, but having some paint on it, I think, is better than none. That's personal opinion, you know. And that's what's nice about painting miniatures. It is about personal preferences. You're figuring out what you like for the colors, what you like for the details, what you want to focus the details on, and then sort of going from there. All right, so I've got my metallic on the skirt loincloth. You know, I'm going to do one more quick layer. So I don't know how well you can see it, but you can still kind of see some of the other colors through there. And I want a really even coat. So, oh yeah, and you can kind of still see some of the white on here. I think we talked about this a little bit the other day when we were doing the white paints. When we were doing just the Comstar, the Rifleman. So the trouble you run into a lot of times with layering paints that are particularly thin, especially like whites or like this one, is that as you are painting on it, the parts that you're touching, you can touch a little bit more of the stuff on the tops and the surface. Those will sometimes get the paint rubbed off. And your tendency is to want to just try to put another coat on. But because the paint isn't fully dry yet, you'll just rub the paint off. So you gotta kind of wait and come back to it. And then you'll get a much more even layer. This one's actually kind of nice because it doesn't really have a lot as much armor as like this guy has the full breastplate, whereas this one's you can kind of see on here it has a lot more sort of folds to it. That's because it is supposed to be cloth. Oh, the helmet! Oh, I almost completely forgot. That's an important detail. These are really fun looking helmets. I like the look of these guys. What's going to be interesting is how in the world am I going to paint their faces? Because it's such a tiny detail. I think that's a great example of the good enough sort of. Oh, luckily this is going to get that color anyway. So in the end of the day, I'm going to want to add some color to the face of this helmet. You can see the sort of jaw in there, poking out the bottom of the helmet. Now, for just getting the models finished and getting them on the table with a deadline, like that's the sort of thing that you can come back to. The sort of thing that while it's on the table and while it's being used, people aren't going to be like, wait a minute, this person's face isn't done. I mean, I'll see it. I'll know that it's not done. But when choosing between getting another model started versus getting... actually, I'll probably do... You know what? I'm looking at it. Sorry. Getting something like the face done versus getting a whole other model started, I think I'd rather make sure that that next model was started. Also, for these swords, these sort of stripes here, I'm going to turn into leather. I realized that only after I had started, but luckily, since we're doing thin paint, I can get a coat on there and it won't be the end of the world. So I need to remember to articulate, because my sound dampener doesn't like it when I mumble. I don't imagine y'all like it when I mumble either. I like to do the sword and the hilt different materials, just because I think it's a good way to sort of create visual distinction between the two things. I think that's true of any model you're working on, whether you're working on mechs or on D&D minis or on wargaming minis. You can really sort of change up the look of a thing and make it easier to tell the difference between two things by changing what color material is on it. So the hilt of the sword is going to be this copper, whereas the blade is going to be more of the steel color. On the blade, actually, I'm looking forward to doing some of the blade stuff because we're gonna play around because these guys are, you know, they're snakes, so they got some poison to them. So I'm gonna play around with that. Also, I don't know if this one has it. Yeah. So on the shoulders here, they've got these bite marks, which is such a tiny detail, but I love it so much. So I gotta figure out how I'm gonna really bring that out on the tabletop because, you know, when they're sitting farther away, a lot harder to tell that they've been bitten by snakes. So, but again, one of those details where to have it tabletop ready for Sunday, I'm a lot more okay with it not having that extra detail. But then when I come back to it, then we can really jump into that detail. So if you've noticed, as I've been going through and covering with the metal, I have been completely covering my zenithal priming. And that I'm okay with. A lot of times with this priming technique, it's just very helpful to see sort of what the details of things, even though they'll be completely covered. Like you can really see like that little snake. What would that be? WWE wrestling belt. All right, so we've got the armor, which actually we're going along at a pretty good clip. I'm quite pleased with this so far. So we've got the armor done for now. I'm going to be doing more on the shield, but I want to get the green layer in first before I continue on to that. And that green layer is going to be our contrast. So we're hopping over to oh my goodness, Pterodon Turquoise. It's a great name for a paint, I'll be honest. A little hard to pronounce sometimes, but it's still a great name. And I know I'm a heathen. I'm pulling directly from the pot, but there's not much can be done about it. I'm gonna put this guy here. I mean, there is. I could not, but yeah. Problem with a round bottom and a. There we go. You know what? I'll just sit there. Put the paint here. So for this one, we're gonna go ahead and head over to our monster brush for getting our stuff out. And again, what I love about these paints is that you can really just slop it on there. Now we don't want to get it on the places that we already have our metal color on, but anywhere that doesn't have paint yet, we can just slap it on there. So for the belt, for the back of the belt, this part here, and a lot of these straps, we're going to go ahead and make them out of a similar color scheme, because I figure the straps that are like holding down this this poison container here, and the belt itself, those are all going to be very similar materials. I want to do, I'm thinking like a very eye-catching sort of red brown, like a red stained leather. So what I'll probably end up doing for that is grab a brown, probably even just the leather brown, honestly, from our starter kit. Put that on there, and then I have a red wash, and then we'll use that for the thing. Oh gosh, there's a lot of things. See, this right here is a great argument for not fully pre-building your miniatures. You can paint them unassembled. You can't use them on the table unassembled, but you can paint them, which would make life a lot easier. Oh, I'm gonna make a mess. Well, actually, that's not bad. All right, so we've got the battle crop top. Such a fascinating choice of clothing. So they got the shorts and the battle crop top. Oh, here we go. So the other thing to remember that I always forget is like the tops of shoulders. because it's the part that you will see the most, but normally you're looking at a model when you're painting it from the front, from the back or from the front, but it's the top that is really what you're seeing when you're painting, or when you're using the model on the table. Also, I about stabbed this guy with my contrast. That would have made me very sad. All right, let's go ahead and pop onto the shield. So for the shield, I'm not going to even try to not get those snakes. The snakes on the front are going to get a reapplication of the gunmetal. And again, I'm just using the natural sort of contours of the metal to make sure that I don't go up over things that I don't want to, because this has a nice good lip. I'm just going to come right up to. Now I could have left it the black and white underneath, but I kind of like the look of the metal kind of peeking out. So had this been just that black and white, it would have had a very different look to it. So I wanted the metallic underneath it to look like it's, you know, stained metal, which it is. Well, as much as it is. And then, of course, these big old mohawks, which I thoroughly enjoy. I feel like it's a very classically sort of Greek hoplite look to have those big old things. I've noticed that most of these guys are mostly bald, with a little bit of something kind of peeking out, almost like they got like a I don't know what's happening with their hair, but I'm gonna have to go in and pick out that detail later. For now I'm gonna mostly just trying to get most of it done. Ooh, yeah. All right, I'm happy with that. Now I'm gonna on this shield here. I'm going to go back through. Oh, goodness. My brush is very dirty. Gotta make sure you get all the stuff out of your brush. Don't forget to close your pots, otherwise it will end up all over your painting area. I've seen many tragic stories of paints in the wrong places, which is to say, all over everything. Oh, man. Use these poor brushes. What you don't see off screen is me trying desperately to keep my brush from getting too dirty. Alright, so we've got that contrast on. So I don't know how good it is. Let me see. Yeah, you can kind of see there is a breakpoint in this spike. So I like the idea of these spikes continuing to be steel, but then this sort of edging part here is going to be that copper. So let's go back to our regiment brush. I'm going to go back to our copper. We're going to wet the brush. Back to the copper. Get just a little on there. And then we're going to do the edges of this guy. Don't forget to do the outer rims. Now, should I get? Probably should. Let's see, I think I got the chin a little bit. Yes. Just doing little touch-ups here on the helmet. The helmet only got, I think, 2 coats. Put that 3rd coat on the helmet. There we go. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and switch up to our character brush, because for this next spot, I'm going to get a little bit more detailed. Character brush. And I really don't want to get any of this copper on the green, because then I'm going to have to go back and redo the green, which is hard to do. I just have to take my time. Also, kind of having the brush be sort of parallel with the surface. If I have my brush in the right spot, it's not going to hit the low spot, it'll hit the high spots. So that's a good way to try and kind of keep yourself from getting paint where you don't want it. Which is something similar we'd be doing for this snake here up on the shield. Oh, sorry. I realize halfway through that I'm not anywhere near the screen. It's one of the fascinating techniques I've been learning with this painting is making sure that I'm painting where it is good for y'all to see. Streak. On these little snake medallions and things, I kind of want to try to do those, make those look like jade. I know that, you know, geographically, if these are in sort of a Greek area, that doesn't make sense. But, as they are sort of fantasy, I can say that in my version of this world, the jade is something that you could find near these delightful people. Delightful would be necessarily the thing. They're kind of into poison. There we go. And I like that the contrast of the colors sitting next to each other, that nice sharp line. I think it just really sells the look even more when you can have two colors with very distinct lines between each other. All right. So let's see. Oh, sorry about the sniffling. My allergies have been causing me troubles. I will endeavor to do that less, because I'm sure that is not fun to hear. Okay. I don't like where this is going. So we're gonna clean off our copper. Heading back over to our gunmetal. I'm going to clean up these spikes a little bit because we want them to look nice and steel. Let's see, oh, I managed to not hit anything on the blade. Impressive. So those are looking good. A lot of other steel in other places. Alright, so that means we're on to the very fun part, making sure I don't mix my colors. So because this sort of snake pattern is very upraised, if I take my brush sort of sideways, and with very light strokes, I can pick the pattern back out. Being very careful not to hit the low part. Oh, and I did. Ah, darn it. That's okay. We'll come through and clean it up, but first, let's... Actually, I was noticing there's a couple spots at the bottom I needed to do anyway, so... Oh, gosh. It's very light brushing to the side. The other thing that adds a level of complication is that it is on a somewhat rounded surface. Alright, yeah, I'm going to definitely need to go back through and clean that up. It's funny, the other one worked out a lot better. Okay, so we've gotten a good start, but as you can see, there's a little bit of a muck on there, so head back to our contrast. We'll just clean it up. Normally I like to use the nice big brush for contrast, but for this one, because we are grabbing such a very small, oh, dang it, a very small section, we're gonna use a very small brush. Just gonna grab a little bit here. I'm actually gonna, make sure I don't have too much on the brush. The thing that's sort of difficult is I don't want it to look too much darker. Although this is the bottom part of the shield, so if it did end up being a little darker, it probably wouldn't be the end of the world. But I also still want it to be sort of even. Oh, there we go. See, that sort of glob is not what I'm looking for. Oh, goodness. Turns out this is a very difficult technique. Also, I'm painting way out here. Ooh. Alright, that's actually not looking too bad. That'll dry hopefully a little bit flatter. And now, for the sort of finishing touch, the thing that takes this guy, well, actually, I do have the underside of the, you know what, I'm gonna wait. No, I got the paint out. Let's do it now. Sorry, what I'm muttering to myself about is the underneath side of this fabric here. I want to get that with the turquoise as well. The problem is I also want to do the edges here, but then I don't want to get my copper. So, again, it's that good old-fashioned use the side of the brush. Oh, I got some in here. So the reason that I am touching my wet palette with my brush is I'm essentially painting it onto the wet palette. And the reason I'm doing that is to try and control how much paint is on my brush. Because I don't want it to be completely loaded, because if it's too filled, as soon as I touch the model, it'll immediately just cover it. And I need as much brush control here as possible. Oh, got a little bit there on the edge, but that's okay. Not much can be done about that. Using contrast paints for this level of accuracy is a bit strange for me, but it's the color that I want, so it's what must be done. Oh man. Oh dear. I just went crazy there. See, this is why I did this before I went through and did the next step, which is going to be over all the metal and making it look sort of weathered and worn. Which I will do all those steps before I even think about going to the skin color, because I don't want the skin, because I'm gonna get some color on the skin, and I don't want to do that after I've taken the time to pretty it up. So that's always the interesting thing about painting any mini, not just these guys with all the different sort of skins. Any miniature that has different sort of colors and textures and things on them. It's good to sort of think about the order in which you're painting things. So what I'm doing right now, oh, that's very nice. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just taking and getting a little water on my brush, which unfortunately my water isn't very clean right now, but I'm getting a little water on the brush. I'm just sort of pushing that contrast around, because contrast has a much longer working time than a lot of the other paints. So I'm just trying to get as much of it out of the nooks and crannies here as I can. Oh, well, look at that. So, inadvertently, what I've done, however, is I've pushed the contrast paint away from the edge, which is what I wanted in the first place. That's okay. Come back to it. It's that delightful push and pull of painting. Oh. The other thing I like to remember sometimes is I don't need to necessarily have my model be sitting up. You can really get some interesting angles. You know, turn your model upside down, come at it from different directions. That leg is definitely needs some skin tone. Yeah. There we go. All right. Well, time to get to the fun part. I really like this part. It's like a good wash. So this is a technical paint. This is, oh my goodness, Nylock Oxide. Yeah, that's Nylock Oxide. But essentially, it's going to take our very clean copper, and it's going to make it look like it's been very heavily weathered. What's fun about this this technical paint is it dries. It looks almost powdery, like that has such a delightfully sort of powdery look to it that I think it really sells the kind of the look I'm going for, especially on the bigger panels. I'm not sure how keen I am on it for these guys, but the especially the armor plates, it looks great. The helmets and whatnot. So let's see. I think I'm gonna go ahead and keep with my regiment brush for putting this on, mostly because it's a little bigger, so I can kind of fill up the bristles, but it's also fine enough that I can be sort of accurate with how I do it. And with this, you're gonna do it just like a wash. You're just gonna sort of slop it on there and sort of mush it around. Make sure you're getting all the spots. And this is why you do this sort of thing before you do your skin. Otherwise, I would be getting my skin all ruined. Yes, I'm filling the eyes right now, but I'll come back and grab that out. I like to start with a very full brush so I can really make sure I get it where I need it. And come back and sort of redistribute. All right. And you could definitely do a wash before this guy. I prefer to just do it straight on from here, just because I think it makes life a little easier. One less step to worry about, because if you... Oh, dang it. That's okay. Oh, in the frame, Rob, in the frame. So I get to concentrating on getting the paint on, and I forget that I'm trying to show you guys what I'm doing. I think I'm going to be okay with, well, I'm going to see how it dries. There's a couple spots I've gotten it where it doesn't belong. That might be okay, just because, you know, when you've got things that are sort of rusty or corroding, they don't necessarily follow the normal. They don't stay where they should. The only problem with that is once you start letting your colors sort of mix like that, it starts to look a little less clean. So you have to always make that decision of, do you make it more appropriate for the style you're going for, or do you make it more realistic? That's a constant struggle. I think I have an artist friend that she's talked to me a little bit about hands in art, and a lot of times, like a normal person's hand is actually quite much smaller than it looks in a lot of paintings and pictures and drawings and things, because what we expect to see and what is actually reality is very different. We expect hands to be quite large, but in reality, in some positions, they look quite small. Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right. Well, we still got some time, so let's go ahead and get that skin color on there, because I am to do that. Actually, let's do before we do that. So we've got this guy to where he's the same level as this guy with the exception of the skin. So what we might do is hop back over to him a little bit and go over some of the skin stuff. So we'll let him dry. I'll give him a moment to dry. I gotta find my flesh shade. Oh. You can tell I've been painting a lot of Battletech miniatures. The my flesh shade is sort of separated. Give it a good proper shake. Make sure that it is all sort of redistributed. And then we can get some contrast back in these muscles. So the flesh shade is going to be a little bit of brown, but then it also has a little bit of sort of pinks and things in it. Because, like, you could use your sepia, and honestly, what I'm going to probably end up doing with these guys is going over it with a couple different washes to really kind of get the tone I'm looking for. And I'll be honest, skin, especially human skin, is a real pain. As it turns out, we have very interesting colors in our skin. Yeah, this foot does not look great. That's okay. What we'll probably end up doing with the foot is covering it with a lot of sand and things. When I get to basing it, we'll see. You get to see a little bit more this week of my kind of normal painting technique. It's not very sort of specific stuff. I love a well sculpted model. When you start putting that wash on, it really brings out those muscle definition. It's just nice. Oh, I gotta cover up. I got a little bit of my color in the wrong place here. But that's okay. It's mostly in the high points, so when I come back through to hit some highlights, I'll cover that up. Yeah, see, another example of that face is hidden in there. Again, I could get in there with the specific details, but I don't know. Like that one's gonna be a tough one. Gotta remember to get his midriff armor. He's all the best armor. Oh, and his head. Keep forgetting that these guys have these bald heads. There we go. Really bringing out that muscle definition. There we go. I've sort of brought up the muscle definition, and then what I'll probably end up doing is some of the layering techniques. Oh, that got a little thick. Little heavy-handed. Use those layering techniques where, like on the tops of the muscles here, on the different sort of high spots, we'll hit it with. We'll probably use the same paint that we used before because we've darkened it with the wash now. So then we can go back over it with the same color and it will look it'll be slightly different. It'll be slightly lighter. All right, so he's been washed. There we go. Let's see, it just adds a little bit more definition to those muscles. It'll lighten up when it as it dries. It'd be less shiny. I mean, shiny muscles actually do make a lot of sense. You got like big, strong guys working out, swinging swords and spears and stuff. Oh, hey. So that's an excellent question, David. This is the Army Painter palette. And actually, if you look on some of the previous episodes, I forgot, I was in a rush this morning, so I didn't put the link to purchase it on our website, but we do have them in stock in the store as well as things you can get online. But yeah, this is the Army Painter wet palette. I like it just because it comes with 50 of these sheets. Now you could, if you have parchment paper, you can just cut out your different sizes for it. But I don't know. I kind of like having pre-cut papers. And then it also, on the lid, you can it has a whole compartment where you can put more some of your brushes and things. But yeah, I've made wet palettes before just with like a Tupperware container, a sponge, and some cut up paper. But the ease of use for this just is really the thing that I enjoy about it. See, now I feel bad that I didn't put the link in there, though. But if you go to zulus.com and you in the search bar, look up wet palette, it's the tap. I don't know why it's called tap and not Army Painter, but it is. So we're snagging some of our barbarian flesh from the starter kit. So you can see I have my awesome organizer over here. I really should find a better place for that. And then I think we're gonna... But yeah, as far as wet palettes go, David, I don't like painting without a wet palette anymore. What's interesting though is I don't generally keep my paints from session to session just because I don't keep my wet palette wet enough for long enough. But just for because I'll a lot of times do sort of longer painting sessions on occasion. But even just like even this one that's only about an hour's worth of painting, like I've definitely had times where the paints that I started with on a dry palette have gone dry on me, whereas with a wet palette, like I can do a good 4 or 5 hour paint session, and the paints that I started with are still nice and wet. Plus, I don't have to worry about thinning the paints as much because the water is already on the palette. Also, this flesh color is a perfect example of we're gonna have to do multiple coats, just because it's nice and thin. That's okay. Yeah. Oh dear. And again, we're at that point where I kind of wish I had painted this guy not assembled. Definitely got some hair peeking out here, and I don't know what exactly I'm going to do with that yet. It's nice though, is it's a little spot, so I can kind of come back to it. Yeah. Oh, that's too much paint. Oh goodness. So I actually, for the longest time, I used the Privateer Press wet palette, just because it was a kind of a nice one. And the thing I like about the Privateer Press wet palette over the Army Painter one is the sponge is much thicker, so you don't have to worry as much about how level your painting surface is. Like what I've noticed with this one is if you've got too much water, and your surface is not level, you can definitely put your paint too much in the water. And then it runs everywhere and is a real pain. But just knowing that, it helps. So you can kind of make sure you're on a level surface, or put maybe a little less water in. Because like with the Privateer Press wet palette, you could just fill that sucker up with water, and it really didn't care, because you had that nice thick sponge. So yeah, for the most part, I've only really dealt with the Privateer Press one and the Army Painter one. So for those of you who are out there, what sort of wet palettes have you used? Do you have any that you prefer? Do you use a wet palette? do you have a sponge in a cup with some parchment paper over top of it? we back in the before times, I was doing some painting classes, and I wanted wet palettes for everyone to use. But you know, we had 20 some odd people coming in to paint, so I didn't want to have to buy a boat ton of wet palettes. So that was how I ended up making the wet palettes. As I went to the store, bought a big old thing of sponges, big old thing of Tupperware containers. Got a what are those things called? Paper cutter. There we go. Sometimes when I'm painting, it's hard to form words. Got a paper cutter to cut all of my sheets, and then yeah, I just banged out a bunch of them so everyone could have their own. I gotta remember to do that part, but it's so hard to get to. Well, I've got a lot of painting left to do on these guys, but I think that's probably where we're going to end it for today. I'm so glad that everyone is able to join us. I really enjoy doing this for you guys. And we will be doing some monsters. I have a snail that you've seen a couple times that I'm very excited to get some paint on. But these guys have a little bit more of a timeline. I figured since I needed to have them ready for Sunday anyway, I can kind of show you guys the techniques I'm using on these this particular grouping of models. And I keep painting up here. It's not useful for that, so you gotta see what my hands are doing. But even that's actually looking pretty good on camera. Also, so the reason that I'm doing these, and I figure I'll just throw this out there here, if you are interested in either learning to play Dungeons & Dragons or a different role-playing game, West End, Star Wars, Fate, Cyberpunk, Shadowrun, something like that. At Zulus, we do offer a couple different things, options for that. We do birthday parties. That's a pretty popular one, either online or in the store. We're starting to have some more store options. I'll still wear a mask because I'm not fully vaccinated yet, so I want to keep everyone safe, and even if I am, I can still be a carrier, so again, gotta be safe. We can also do online if you're, say, not in the Seattle area, which I know that some of you aren't, and you're wanting to do some D&D, that is an option. So yeah. I guess you guys have a lovely time out there. Have fun painting your models. I'd love to see what you guys are painting. If you want to post any pictures, we do have a Discord. If you go to zulusgames.com, go to community. There is a link to the Discord there. You can go to. We have some miniatures painting channels. Oh man, you can really tell the difference between the two arms. I have to add some more contrast. But yeah, go ahead and throw some of your paintings up there. I'd love to see them. And until next time, stay safe out there. And yeah, I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.